Welcome, everybody. My name is Craig Renti, and welcome to the world's greatest podcast. And I'm so excited today. We talk about technology, we talk about licensing, we talk about contracts. And I'm really excited about today's guest, Ken Adams, who I have been personally following on LinkedIn for years. He puts out some amazing material. He's an expert in contracting, drafting, making things simpler and easier and sort of taking away the murkiness around contracts. At least that's his goal. So, Ken, welcome to the world's greatest podcast. It's great to have you.
Hi, Craig. It's a pleasure to be here.
I tell this to every guest, so there's a little pressure, at least for the next 30 minutes or so. You need to be the world's greatest podcast guest. So we've got to step it up today.
I'm ready for the challenge.
So Ken, I know about you. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and sort of what
Certainly.
you do? Yeah.
Born and raised overseas, my father worked with the U.S. State Department, so we racketed around various parts of Europe and Africa until I was 11, at which point we moved to England, and I did all my secondary and college education in England. Then remembered that I was in fact American, so ended up coming back to the U.S. for law school, and then found myself in big law. So, okay, not too shocking a trajectory, but pretty early on, I realized that my sloth-like metabolism, I was perhaps not best suited to cranking out deals, which I could do, but I had a sense that I wanted to look at other things too, in a more scholarly way, perhaps. So at some point I thought, well, since I'm immersed in contract language, why not look at contract language, think about what works and what doesn't work. And I started devoting more and more of my time to that. And it reached its logical conclusion in 2006 when I was able to quit the practice of law and devote myself full time to my grand passion for contract language. It was a process of a few years of extricating myself, but I made it. And I've spent the 20 years since just continuing to work on that topic. The most obvious manifestation of it is my book, A Manual Style for Contract Drafting, published by the American Bar Association, first edition in 2004. Then a flimsy paperback, now a 670-page hardback book for cracking walnuts or some other suitable task. Um, and it has turned into something of a beast. And now that I've spent enough time on it, I'm able to just marvel a little at what I've found, which is that I am the only person on the planet with the stomach for this kind of work. I think it's just the way I'm wired. I discovered late in life that I'm not particularly suited to doing other people's work for them. I would just like to be left alone to my own devices, making order out of chaos. And
That
with contract language, there's plenty of chaos, and it's just no one else volunteered for the task. So my book is essentially um, a set of guidelines for saying clearly and concisely in a contract whatever you want to say. What you say in a contract is a different task, but things aren't going to work out well unless you know how to say clearly and concisely whatever you want to say. So that's what the book is about, and it's been the work of well 20 plus years putting it together.
so I'm always interested when people create things, and obviously you created your book. You mentioned it started as a pamphlet almost, and now it's this 600 page treatise on contract drafting. Uh, how did you know you wanted to do that? Like, when did you say I'm gonna write a book about this? Because, like you said, no one was raising their hand to do it. So it must have been a little leap for you. Like, I'm going to do this thing, this crazy thing, like write a book. And I think people are going to find this helpful. I would imagine that's sort of there's a little bit of a leap there. Like you can put something out and then no one reads it, but I think people are reading it and using it and sort of, so how do you go through that process?
Yeah. It has, in fact, been a grand legal publishing success. The American Bar Association has sold tens of thousands of
Mhm.
copies. So I'm glad that it has found a readership. But in terms of how I came about doing it, I think it's just how I'm wired. I have the notion that there's Adam's family genes involved. A few days ago, I encountered again a photograph from about 100 years ago of my grandfather and three of his children on walking on the Sphinx on
I
top
saw
of
that.
the because he
Yeah.
was uh, uh, born and raised in the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania area, uh, working on farms essentially, but was sent to the University of Chicago to learn Arabic, ended up in Egypt, dean of the School of Oriental Studies, wrote a of the American University in Cairo, wrote a um, what became a classic work on Islam and modernism in Egypt. So bit of a, I think of him as a kind of bit of a lone rogue in terms of just beating a path that was not at all obvious in terms of rural Pennsylvania farm boy ending up running an academic institution in Cairo, of all places. So I think of my own trajectory as a lower key version of that sort of thing, just responding ultimately to my own urge to create order out of chaos. That ultimately that was the stronger impulse, even after I found myself in a kind of a perfectly legitimate career path in terms of transactional lawyer and so on. I had to do something differently. So just it it was not obvious that it was going to work out. Um, And there are other people in my broader family that might have had the same urge, but just didn't have the opportunity. Whereas I had the combination of the urge and the opportunity. Hey, I'm in the middle of this chaotic world that is crying out for someone to try and create some order. So I rolled up my sleeves and bit by bit went about that uh, large task.
Well, it's definitely helped me when I think about when and I'm on both ends of this, right? We are drafting contracts. We have standard templates that we use with our clients. We receive their standard templates. We are helping customers negotiate contracts with big vendors and small vendors. So I'm sort of on all sides of the contracts world. One of the things I noticed, and when I worked for a big tech company, we had a program to put our contracts in plain English, make them easier, make them more kinder and friendlier. And I think people use different tactics to sort of gain an advantage in contracting. One is to obfuscate and sort of put a lot of words and make things sound more difficult than they have to be.
Mhm,
And we can talk about why that is.
mhm.
But another thing that I see companies doing is taking things out of contracts and sticking them in URLs and then having them change over time. So, it used to be my contract. Here's my contract. Here's a piece of paper, and we sign it, and we all know I'll Xerox this for you, and you have your copy, and I have my copy. Now there's URLs and links, and almost everything can change with the vendor without even sort of notification. They just can change it whenever they want. So what is a contract now? Like when do we pass the point and say this is sort of a guiding document, but it's not super binding because one side seems to be able to change whatever they want whenever they want.
Sure. The idea of having something, a link to a URL, and having it be made explicit or not so explicit that the vendor can cheerfully change what's on that URL, does create a basic problem. Whether you can do anything about it depends on how the negotiation power is divided between the two sides. It's just it's it's an awkward situation that has no simple fix. It's just a fact of life that you have to, most of us have to just like live with, and just as a cost of doing business. Um, but yes, ideally, you say instead, well, actually, why don't you just print out what's on that URL and
Mm.
let's slap that to the back of the contract. And if you want to make changes, let's discuss it. But whether you can actually realistically asked to do that depends on your circumstances. So welcome to the world of contracts. That's just one of any number of obstacles to making things easy to work with.
The other day, being a little bit, maybe not to the level you are, obviously, but being a little bit of a contracts nerd myself, I received an email the other day saying that the terms of service for my HBO account have changed. I was like, oh, okay. Let me click on what they are. So I'm reading through, like it's like 100 pages. But then it didn't even say what the changes were. It just said, here are the new terms of service. So I was like, how the heck am I going to even know? So, of course, I went into AI, ChatGPT or Grok or something. I said, can you give me the differences between, and it wasn't going to do anything with it. It was just for my own personal knowledge. What is
Mm.
HBO changing? What's the difference between the old T's and C's and the new T's and C's? And they both came back and said, well, we don't have access to the old ones, so we really can't tell you. But these are things that tech companies and publishing companies seem to be changing. So I was trying to use AI to help me understand my contracts. At least this thing I have with HBO, which I have no bargaining power over, and I'm going to accept it. And I'm probably one of four people who actually went down that rabbit hole. But I'd like to give you a couple of examples of how we are using AI in contracts, or how I have used it. But I'd like your thoughts because is AI going to make contracting easier? Is it going to make them clearer? Is it going to make them more complicated? Is it a way that vendors will use it to create more traps? Can we uncover this? Like, how is this playing out, and how is AI playing out in the world of contracts? Big question.
Let's see. Well, I mean, um, we're immersed in an AI discussion globally. I am not equipped to take part in most of that conversation. AI globally, certainly not. AI in contracts, well, that's too broad, just like AI in the law is too broad. I can narrow it down to AI and contract drafting,
Okay.
which which makes things easier. I mean, AI and contract review is a different matter, and there are dozens of vendors out there cheerfully marketing their products to help with review of contracts. And I was involved in helping to build one of those products in my day job capacity with LegalSifter. But my focus has ultimately always been on contract drafting, and there uh, the the gist of AI and what its role might be is pretty simple. What is out there currently in terms of business contracts is dysfunction, just because people have been copying and pasting on faith from precedent contracts or templates of questionable quality and relevance. And the dysfunction is significant. I have built a career based on pointing at and laughing at the dysfunction. So it verges on the grotesque. If you feed AI dysfunction, it will give you back dysfunction.
Yep.
So there is no way of getting anything good from feeding what's out there to AI. I recall one uh, big UK law firm saying, well, feed it your gold standard templates. And whatever a gold standard template might be, I have never encountered one simply because I've prodded what's out there. I've looked at what's out there, just selecting stuff or what clients have showed me, and all I see is varying degrees of dysfunction. So you're never going to get anything good by feeding the dysfunction to AI. So that's kind of the end of it. If your only goal is to replicate what's out there now, create something that passes plausibly as mainstream contract drafting, then go for it. But that is setting the bar low. I like to think we have, you know, greater ambitions than that ultimately.
Well, I know so we've been in business 14 years now. And, there was a time where we needed our first contract. So we were like, okay, we're a professional services company. We need a services contract. So this is, before uh, generative AI anyway, and or readily accessible generative AI. So we just went out and did searches on um, services contracts. And I obviously had some background working for big tech companies, so I knew what those contracts looked like. And we just took a few and we smushed them together and said, this is, and then we waited for feedback, right? We would send it to our client and then they would crap all over it or not, or, depending on sort of their culture. And so our contracts, I think, have gotten better over time, but we started with just taking what I guess would be sort of just what's out there and then smushing it together and seeing if it stuck.
The awkward reality is that no one really drafts from scratch. Everyone is copying and pasting to some degree. And that has a problem for me, or just a problematic circumstance, in that my book is about how to say stuff clearly and concisely. It's as if I'm presenting the reader with with piles of nuts and bolts and other components, and saying, "Behold, these high quality uh, components that will allow you to build these structures that will allow you to accomplish whatever you want to accomplish. They're approved, vetted. Let's go for it." Well, in effect, my readers have said, "Yeah, okay, but we're not really in the frame of mind to build stuff. We don't want to build stuff. We just want to have contracts. We want someone to give us contracts. Where can I find contracts that meet your guidelines and otherwise say what they should say?" And I say, nowhere. There is no authoritative source, because I've looked at all the ostensibly authoritative sources and they are not what they pass themselves off as. So, um, so in effect, the book is yes, it's a set of guidelines that allows people to individuals to stay out of trouble
Mhm.
by just, okay, I need to fix this and that. Here's how I can tweak a particular component. But that leaves the reader with a bigger task of, okay, what am I going to work with? And generally what you're going to work with is the dysfunction of mainstream contract drafting, which is just um, it just retooling the dysfunction is time consuming and laborious, and most people just don't have the appetite for it because they have day jobs. I've been able to do what I do because I haven't had that kind of commitment for the longest time, so I can just live in my cave and noodle on contract language. Other people generally, they have stuff to accomplish, so they are copying and pasting and just making do. So it's just, so that is the awkward reality that um, there is for most of us, We just have to make do with the copy and paste machine.
Mhm. You know, the reality of the copy and paste when I was hiring people when I was at Oracle, and some of the people we hired were, fresh out of law school to do, contract uh, contract administration, contract negotiations. So it was a nice background. And I remember asking someone, I said, "Listen, do you know how to copy and paste?" And they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like that's what we do here. We copy and paste. And at the time, we were copying and pasting with scissors and glue sticks because we had to put it on a template.
Yeah.
So they're like, "Yeah, I can copy out of Word." I'm like, "No, no, no. Scissor, glue stick. We need the language to." So I get the copy and paste. We had, or personally, I had recently an example where I needed a contract and I was selling a car. So I was like, I want to sell a car in the state of New Jersey. And I said, listen, I want them to know that this is as is. And I don't know if this car work and whatever. I just wanted all these protections. And can you give me a contract that does this? And it did. And boy, the language, I couldn't even understand. Like it was so legalese. I had to go back a second time and say, could you put this in plain English so it doesn't read like a contract? And the second version was better. But to your point, these LLMs, these large language models, they have difficult contracts in them. They have garbage in, garbage out. So there is my one example, and I'm, professional contract practitioner, and so I've been dealing with this stuff. And even I had to take what came out of my second draft and change it because I was like, I don't want to scare this person away. There's like a balancing act. I want them to understand what they're buying. I also don't want to scare them away with like 6 pages. This is not a business to business. This is some guy who wants a car for his kid, right? So, but I think this idea of ultimately contracts are about meeting of the minds. Like I want to make sure what I'm selling you is you're in agreement as to what you're buying, and for me, that's what I'm always looking for is clarity, clarity, clarity. How can I make this clearer so there are no surprises on the other side?
Yes, and obviously, that's what I spent a large part of my life working on. By the way, regarding AI, another problem with AI is that it um, it just perpetuates the passivity involved in copying and pasting because you are relying on the AI to make some of the decisions
Mm.
and most of the decisions, even potentially all of the decisions, depending on what you ask for. So it's as if you are you're not controlling the contract language. Instead, you're controlling the joystick that operates the AI, and you're giving it a some subset of instructions that
Yes.
isn't going to resemble the decisions that the AI ultimately makes. So it's just a variation of old-fashioned copying and pasting where you're saying, hey, I'm going to use these two contracts that reflects decisions made for other deals. And so I have to, well, I have to live with what's there and modify it to the extent I can to reflect my very different circumstances,
Mhm.
besides making whatever changes are required to make it clearer. So um, generally, people have limited time, authority, competence to entirely reverse engineer what they've been given, and people don't have the what it takes to give AI endless little instructions. That defeats the entire purpose.
Yep.
So so yes, there's just it in addition to the shortcomings in what you're given, it also just gives you that the passive I'm I'm a passenger. I'm at the mercy of the AI approach. Um, it's one encountered discussions, all sorts of discussions about how a technology um, attenuates with one's cognitive abilities. Some new technology comes along to address a particular thing, and before you know it, your brain has purged itself of whatever it takes to accomplish whatever the technology does. So in some respects, I'm okay with that. Like GPS, I've surrendered all my whatever brain function deals with finding my way three-dimensionally in the world. I say, okay, it gets me from A to B. I'm willing to make that sacrifice. But for contracts, I'm not. Well, I think it's risky to make that kind of sacrifice, saying, "Hey, I'm ceding to the AI making all these decisions," because it's not a matter of getting from A to B. In contracts, you have all sorts of decisions that are there to be made if you think it's appropriate, and just saying, "Nah, I'll limit myself to that small subset," is not ideal.
So I would think, and you mentioned this before, most people out there are just looking to make what they have better versus, I want to have a brand new I've got the blank piece of paper here.
Mhm.
Um, so like I just think about my little, I want to buy a car or I want to sell a car. My options there are, I mean, I could go out and search for, give me examples of these contracts and go to Reddit boards and find people who've done it. I could try to draft one on my own. I could hire someone to give me a template. I don't know if there's a repository of standard sales contracts in the state of New Jersey for automobiles, that have been sort of approved. But it's where do you start? Like if you're in a position where you do have a blank slate, this is something brand new that we're doing, and I want to avoid the mistakes and come up with something that helps my business, right? Because that's what we're talking about here. These documents are supposed to be springboards into growing your business, not preventing business. We used to be called sales prevention sometimes, the contracts organization, because we were, you know, uh, doing, whatever tasks we were meant to do. Um, where do I start if I'm starting from scratch? Like, what's some practical advice for a practitioner who has a new service or new offering and doesn't want to just take the garbage that's been done before. They do want to come up with a gold standard. Where
Okay.
where do they go?
Well, none of those options you cited are going to get you there. Instead, what's required is something different. I've been nagging people for 15 years, uh, saying that the only escape from the copy and paste machine is to make a fresh start using highly customizable automated templates. How that works is you're presented with an interview that asks you questions um, about what kind of deal you're looking to put together. The interview uses document automation software, something that is not at all glamorous. It's been with us for 20 years. Um, and it's very adept at presenting the questions. It asks a question, says, okay, choose A, B, or C, and you choose C. And then the questionnaire adjusts, it's dynamic. So it says, oh, you're interested in C. Well, then allow us to present you more questions that address the C option.
Hmm.
So it adjusts appropriately, and you can present guidance. And when you're done, you click assemble or whatever it is, and the system pulls together language that reflects the deal you have chosen to construct by selecting whatever deal points you want included. So I first attempted a highly customizable template like that 15 years ago. It didn't go anywhere because there's me and a lemonade stand in effect. But I've kept that in mind as the only way to create a contract that addresses your needs. So, so that's I've returned to that task in my capacity as head of the originally named Adams Contracts. It is a division of LegalSifter that creates highly customizable templates. we're on a kind of protracted low-key rollout because we're just adding templates and with each template getting a little more sophisticated, getting a little more ambitious. Uh, we start out with confidentiality agreements inevitably, then a boilerplate template, then service agreement template, and um, we just started work on our SaaS template, which will be the most ambitious of all our templates. The idea is to allow people to make a fresh start for transactions that they care about, where something is at stake. So you say, I don't want to use a cookie cutter approach. There's some standard form initiatives out there that might work fine for people, but if you have enough at stake that you want to be confident that you're tailoring a contract to address circumstances in ways that make sense for your organization, then a highly customizable template like ours makes sense. And inevitably, just as I'm the only person who saw fit to come up with guidelines for being clear and concise in contracts and to spend 20 plus years at the task, I'm the only person developing this kind of highly customizable template because it's a pretty gruesome task in that you are creating coded documents that are just well barely human readable because they are just have all this coding in there to reflect that you're providing options on options on options on options. The hard work is under the hood. The user is just asked the question. So essentially, we are um, we are presenting the user with two commodities that otherwise would take all sorts of time to come up with. The first commodity is a decision tree. Instead of just being presented with a some contract to copy and paste from that reflects some other deal reality, a bunch of answered questions baked into the Word document you're using. Instead, we're presenting you with a full decision tree that might ultimately be hundreds of questions that you only answer a subset of,
Mhm.
depending on your urge. And it says, okay, you pick what is relevant for you. And then after you've picked, the next commodity comes along, which is we give you the verbiage to express the deal you have chosen using my guidelines and with whatever help from specialists is necessary to express clearly and concisely and relevantly whatever deal points you have selected. What what we leave the user with is the task of answering the questions. And that has been fascinating to observe in that there are plenty of people who say, why all the questions? These questions are annoying. If you had to answer the questions repeatedly, I'd say, yeah, that's annoying. Whereas in fact, the software allows you to save answer sets. So you don't have to repeat the answering the questions. People
Mhm.
object to answering the questions once. And what that tells me is you don't care enough about creating a deal that is relevant for you. You're saying, just make those decisions for me. We can't make those decisions for you unless you're willing to have them be irrelevant. So this just tells me that people are so used to that passivity. They're so used to copy and pasting where all the decisions or most of the decisions have been made already. They just they don't like being forced to make decisions about the deal, decisions that can get kind of annoying, like if it's intellectual property. I'm not an intellectual property person. Well, if you need a specialist to help you construct a deal that involves intellectual property, then you're going to have to do that, or you're just going to say, I'm happy with winging it because that's the comfort that a copy and paste mindset gives me.
Well, you
So
sort of do
yeah.
the least risky thing, and that's what I see. I see when vendors small company, we're working with very large companies. There's a little bit of a balance of power. So we're often required to use their paper. And I think
Sure.
what you said is I'm constantly getting documents, and it took me a while to figure, it took us a while to figure this out. We get these documents that just don't apply. They're for, you know, creating software. They're software create, not professional services
Sure.
contracts. So
Mhm.
so we now know to ask the right questions. If you are going to send me these things, please think about these, to require the other side to put a little bit of thought, at least into the template they send over. But I'm thinking about that process in terms of asking the right questions, because it would seem there are multiple people that would be responsible for answering those questions. So I'm because I have,
Sure. Yeah.
just like you,
Yes.
I have multiple hats. So I'm a salesperson. I'm talking to a customer. I need to ask them a whole bunch of questions around what their problems are. And then I can relate that to what our solutions are and sort of connect those two. So is this? And then when it goes to our contracts people, and I put my blue contracts hat on. Now I have to answer, well, they want this and they want, this warranty or this, protection on IP, or whatever they're looking for, this guarantee. And now I have to put on, well, here's my standard where we usually start. Do I want to take a little more risk on for this customer? Do I not want to? Do I want to take less risk on for this customer? So rather than our standard template says this, maybe I need to be thinking of it, just answering the questions dynamically so that at the end, because I know going back to the salesperson, if I don't have something that meets our needs and is acceptable to the client, now we're in red line hell. Red line, red line, red line, red line, red line, red. And as a salesperson, I want to get the deal done because I want to get the commission, and as a delivery person, I want to get the deal done because I want work. And as my finance person, I want that, I want the revenue coming in. So I love that idea about answering questions and producing a document that sort of resonates to me. And I'm thinking about it as there's multiple it's not one person
Yeah.
maybe who has all the answers.
You can do a screen sharing session with people on your side of the table, including intellectual property specialists or insurance specialists or whoever, saying, okay, how do we answer these questions? Help me answer these questions. And ultimately, you can present perhaps a modified version of the questionnaire to the other side, saying, here are some choices. What works best for you? Or we can here are the answers that we can work with, and we go through. Both sides go through the questionnaire and make the choices rather than engaging in a back and forth of red lines. It can short circuit the process, just streamline the process. So you can avoid that and focus on those issues where, in fact, there is stuff to talk about. So I look forward to exploring that aspect, the negotiation platform aspect.
No, that's just the concept. Even listen, even a small company like us, we've got a few different templates. Just you've given me some ideas on sort of how to think about my conversations with customers and making sure that, and with our finance team and our contracts team, and some of those are me and some of them aren't. Um, but do you have some when you start reviewing contracts? Do you have a couple of clauses that you just shake your head and be like, this, I see this over and over and over again, and I hate it, and it's the worst thing ever? Like, give me some examples where you just were shaking your head.
Well, first off, my role is specialized. I haven't done deals in essentially
Right.
25 years. So I am in the grandstand watching the action
But
rather
I see
than
you
being on
post
the
on
field.
LinkedIn. You're staying, you're
No, of
watching
course.
closely.
I have feel strongly about stuff. Um, some things I have written about endlessly. Um, so, for example, efforts provisions
Hmm.
are always entertaining in terms of what people who work with contracts think, which is that you have different efforts provisions that reflect different levels of onerousness, how hard the party has to try to achieve a particular end
Best
goal.
efforts, reasonable efforts.
But
Yeah,
that is, in fact, inconsistent with US case law, and it's inconsistent with how humans communicate. It's inconsistent with the English language and logic. It doesn't make sense. But the legalistic mindset just whole clings to that notion, even though it's nonsense. So my advice is just to say reasonable efforts and leave it at that. And indeed, try to avoid any efforts provisions at all. But there are contexts where you have to use it. So just say reasonable efforts. And I was entertained to have the Delaware Chancery Court say, yeah, a few years ago, in an efforts dispute, hey, yeah, this is what makes sense. And why do we say that? Well, because we have Adams's law review article here, and it's the best resource on the subject, and Adams is the leading authority. So yay me. But it was just I wrote that article because I observed the chaos in people's understanding and how different court systems around the world have handled things. So I thought, again, this is my attempt to try and make some order. And it was gratifying to have an important court system in the US actually notice that and point to it. So if that's my role, then it's great to get that sort of validation.
now you must get called upon to provide training to companies, right? They're sort of stuck in the old ways of doing things, and they want someone to come and talk to their legal teams or operations teams, contracts teams about you know, the process and how to make their business better, leveraging better contracts. Um, are you what's your experience there? You go out there and you know provide a couple of days, you reviewing their agreements, you're helping them. Like, what are companies looking for? Where are they struggling?
I do provide that training. I've done it for hundreds of organizations over the years, and it helps individuals be better informed consumers of contract language, consumers and producers. It helps them stay out of trouble. What it is less helpful for is helping organizations change. Because as I said,
Mm,
um, fixing contract templates is a gruesome process and it involves all sorts of change that organizations are very reluctant to indulge in. Inertia is the order of the day for organizations. So helpful for individuals, but organizations have a way of just being stuck with the dysfunction. I used to do consulting work, helping companies redo their templates. But I've stopped that because, for one thing, bespoke retooling of contract language is laborious. Just fixing each, you might have 10 organizations with their services agreement, whatever sort,
oh yeah.
and you end up doing 10 different versions of the same thing. It's a waste of time. So that's why I'm now doing templates, highly customizable templates. And I say, instead of hiring me for some steep fee, just pay my negligible monthly rate and create whatever you want. Um, and even we can help you create a further customized version of the template to address your needs. We have your own customizable version. Um, Essentially, I'm saying I'm catering to those organizations that can handle the change, that are willing to do a fresh start. Because tweaking templates isn't going to get you anywhere because your templates are are going to be terrible. I just everything everywhere I look, they're varying degrees of terrible. So
No one's
just
doing it right. No one's
so
got good
no,
templates.
everything is bad enough that it's best to just start over. So just clear the decks. I'm looking to create a business on the 3% of the market that can handle change, because organizations that can't handle change are just uh, that's too annoying a sector to deal with. If you can handle change, then Adams contracts is a sensible way to go. Um, so that's that's what it's working down to. Um, what it has come down to. Individuals, they're always going to benefit from my book, from my training, just in terms of being better informed. So whether it's public, whether it's public training um, or presentations I do for a law firm or company, your contracts people are always going to be better off in terms of just being alert to what the problems are. Fixing your templates, that's a complete other task, requires a different approach, and um, and that's where Adams contracts is the rational approach. Um, we'll see how it all plays out, because Adams contracts is the oldest idea in the world, but it is but it is yeah, it's the first time someone is actually doing it, and it's going to involve change. So I'm happy to see how the market ultimately responds, just because I'm in this business to make things better.
There's
And
definitely
that's it.
market. I mean, again, sort of seeing contracting from all sides. Definitely see from the sales side, from the buy side, from the advisory side, having a better starting point will just lead to faster conclusions, faster business, better
No,
business,
they, I,
happier customers, more
the
money.
the payoff is clear, but the thing is, if you're willing to engage in short-term thinking, then you can ignore the long-term costs, the long-term benefits. It's very easy if you're just set on the short term to just keep doing what you're doing. But if you want things to work out well in the long haul, then clearer, more concise, more relevant is the way to go. And there's all sorts of benefits to be reaped by just starting over.
I mean, we have had so many times where these large vendors and smaller vendors, it doesn't have to be a large company, they give us these contracts. It's like you need to put your work in this template. And it's gotten to the point now, and I don't know if this is good or bad. It's never hurt us, and it's helped us close business. I'm like, listen, this is all fine, but we're gonna put a preamble on this contract. We're gonna put a paragraph on what the heck what your goals are, what I can do, and we're just going to put some real words like people communicate to each other. Your company is being audited by Oracle, and you need us to help and this is how we're going to help you. And here are the terms of the contract. And, we don't get into litigation with our customers. We're all happy. We sort of get them through their problems with big tech. But I rely on that. I'm just like, I can't go through a 100-page contract for 6 weeks worth of work. Like I'll be here in 6 weeks looking at this thing.
All right.
Now I know there are tools that I can use to sort of dump those contracts in and tell me where we see these problems, and so we can use that. But I rely a lot on that preamble, and
Now,
I don't know if that's good or bad, but I'm just like, there's got to be something in this contract that talks like I talk to customers.
the thing is that the problem goes beyond anything that can be addressed with contract review, AI, softwares. You just earlier when you asked about something that makes me laugh, and I mentioned efforts. Okay, well, here's something that demonstrates the deeper nature of the problem. Um, Consequential damages.
Hmm.
My guilty secret for 4 editions of the book was that I had a hard time figuring out what the heck people were talking about. And for the 5th edition, I thought, all right, let's well, let's take a closer look at this. And I ended up identifying three possible meanings for consequential damages, three utterly different meanings. Um, and I won't get into those what those meanings are, but they demonstrated a weird legalistic construct, which is let's come up with a phrase, consequential damages, that means something entirely unrelated to the phrase consequential damages. It's like it could have just used the word pumpkin or something. It doesn't help articulate what is at stake, but that's the way the legalistic mindset works. So I see people. So consequential damage is a feature of negotiations. So it's limitation of liability. Consequential damages is the number one component you see out of the dozens of possible components that can be included. I think that 97% of people deep down have no idea what consequential damages means. They just know they want it in there or they want it out. And that's what the negotiations are about. It's like it's the MacGuffin, which is a Hitchcock term for the plot fulcrum for a movie that doesn't actually matter except people revolve around it. I think consequential damages is a MacGuffin that people actually don't understand, but still engage in all sorts of efforts that are directed towards consequential damages. So it just that is demonstrates a level of incomprehension that is baked into contracts, and that is not easily fixed and without the fresh start, which where I say, oh, which of these meanings you actually have in mind? Oh, it's a matter of special circumstances. Well, let's address that directly rather than just using some jargon term and hoping for the best.
Yeah, I think we love the idea of these templates, the not this customizable templates. I think when I hear, having run a large contracts organization and having to go through the change management, the idea of having a template, there is an appeal to it. But I'm completely seeing where you're going with that one example. Like, well, what did you mean by that? What are you trying to avoid? What are you worried about that you put that language in there or that you want that language out of there? Again, I go back, a lot of what you're talking about are conversations I have with people in the sales process. I'm talking, well, okay, they give me these red lines and I don't even look at them. I was like, listen, there's a lot of red on this page. What are you worried about? Like, did someone else hurt you before? Like, did someone screw you? Like, is there something, or are you making a change? Is there something I'm not seeing? Like, help me understand why the red, why all this stuff is on this page, so then I can address it. And maybe it is me going through all of this and line by line, or maybe it's adding a different clause or putting some context into the contract. I was working with a client just Friday, and he was asking me about this clause and that clause as well. This is what it means, and this is why we do that. He said, "Well, why don't you just put that in there?" It's like, actually, that's a good idea. I'm going to put that in there. So we're updating our templates. But I could, being a little bit of a contracts nerd myself, I could talk to you, Ken, forever.
Mm.
Like I said, I've been following you for years on LinkedIn, so it's great to have a more in-depth conversation. How can people get in hold of you, get in touch with you, get access to your work, if they're trying to make their contracts better?
Well, I'm alarmingly accessible. For my training and scholarship stuff, there's adamsdrafting.com. For the highly customizable templates, there's adamscontracts.com. And people have a way of encountering me unexpectedly just by Googling some random contract drafting stuff. So I'm easy to find. But so uh, um, if clear contract language and a way of coming up with templates that just clear the decks and say what you need to say uh, are all at all of any interest to you, then welcome to my world.
No, I definitely recommend people reach out, because if you're in the business of doing business, I mean, this is so critical. Like, there's just times where the client needs us and we want, and we're going through weeks and weeks of this arduous process because we're using bad templates. Our templates are great, but their templates are terrible.
Of course.
um, but and then you've got the red line hell you're in. But I always learn something new in these when I do these podcasts. And one thing I'm going to leverage is the phrase you used a couple of times. This is going to be a gruesome process. I'm going to use that when we talk about to customers about audits and sort of defending from a vendor. I'm like, this is going to get gruesome. So thank you for adding that. But you've also given me some things to think about. Um, Contracts is not just contracts, but it's the sales part of it as well. So I'm looking at what you're saying and sort of how can I use that upfront in my business model. But you post a lot of great stuff. One other thing you didn't say is I highly recommend if folks want to just stay up to date, just connect with Ken on LinkedIn and follow the things you post. I'm always interested in people who post interesting things. I saw your post about the Sphinx the other day. That was great. I saw your post about sort of the three reasons that there are no gold standards and why templates are so bad. So that was another great one. So I'm always following your work. So thank you for putting that out, and thank you as a contracts practitioner. Thank you for making the contracts world a little bit better.
Hey, it's why I'm here. So my pleasure. And thank
All
you.
right. And thank you for being the world's greatest podcast guest today. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Until the next time on the world's greatest podcast.